This is what I talked about earlier, the Economic Recovery Initiative, and this is related to the United States stimulus bill because our economy is not doing as well as yours. And so procurement officials are being trained to identify pre-award collusion. Investigators and auditors are being trained as well. They're developing best practices aimed at protecting the procurement and program and funding processes. And I would really recommend, I'm sure some of this is going on in Brazil, but with what I've seen and heard about the infrastructure and the rapid growth in Brazil, that these kinds of proactive protective measures be taken as well. I think it's very important to be on guard. When you're building this many roads, there is going to be collusion. I can promise you that. I would bet the 50 reals in my pocket, which doesn't buy me very much, I found out, since I've gotten to Brazil. It's much better for you guys to come shopping in the United States, I think. But I would bet money. If Brazil is building that many roads, there's a problem. If they're building stadiums, there's a problem. And so you have to be on guard for that. Beforehand is the best time to try to prevent it from happening. And again, here's some of the statistics. There have been hundreds of training presentations. 13,000 people have gotten the trainings. And you can read more about it when you look at the DOJ website and find more about their recovery initiatives that have been taken. Here are some of the red flags that are actually included in the training. And these really relate to bid rigging and the situations with road building that were often and commonly seen. There are a few sellers in the industry, so you only have a few players. That could be a problem. That means it's more likely. If you only have a few players, it's just easier for them to get together and control a situation. If you only have 3 players that are building roads or trying to get a concession, it's easier for them to get together and decide who's going to win that concession, who's going to win the next concession, who's going to win the third concession, as opposed to if you have 12 companies that are involved. It's harder to get 12 people to agree on something than it is 3. You have a small group of major vendors that controls a large percentage of the market. So even if you have 12 players, 3 of those players control 90, 80, 75% of the market. So those are the real powerful people. You have to watch out for that. You have repeat competing vendors, the same people showing up over and over again. That's something to be careful. The product is a standardized product or service. So it's essentially a commodity product where you're not really distinguishing based on the quality of the product. It's really going to come down to price. The decision is going to come down to price. And roads are fairly standardized. I mean, even in the United States, some states have pretty bad roads, others have better roads. But generally, people are going to drive a road not because of the quality of the road, but because it's the shortest route. It may have the less traffic on it, but not because the road has potholes or it's basically it's going to be a price-sensitive type of service or product. Competitors frequently interact through social conventions, trade association meetings, shifting employment. That means they go from one company to the next. They leave one company and they say, okay, now I'm going to go work for the competitor company because I have all this experience or because my friend works over there. Trade association meetings, consortiums, or joint ventures. Now here's where it's very interesting, and I'm going to get to the hypothetical of or it's not really a hypothetical, the STP, the case study here, where you have a consortium of these concessioners, the road builders, and even though it's a legal situation, and CAGE approved that situation, it really is something, and I don't know that there's any problem there, I should say, but it's something to sort of be concerned about in a sense that they have a valid reason to get together, and that is to discuss their consortium and STP as Professor Claudia was saying, they're board members on each other's companies. And so I don't know that that kind of thing is illegal in and of itself. It probably isn't. It's probably legitimate. But there's reason to be concerned because it gives these companies and individuals the opportunity to come together and have discussions that they shouldn't be having. It gives them a place to talk. And very often I saw with the airlines case, when I investigated the airlines industry, these kinds of conversations would happen, after a trade meeting. They would see each other, or they would play golf. And there's nothing wrong with having a trade meeting. There's nothing wrong with playing golf with your competitor, but it's an occasion to be very careful and very cautious. A lawyer would tell any of these people, you can do it, but don't talk about pricing with the other person. But the temptation is always there, you see, and especially if they're friends, if they used to work with the person, they get together, they're at a consortium meeting, and they say, hey, that project that's coming up, are you guys bidding on that? We're going to bid on that. We really want that one. Or with the airlines, you would see, hey, the fuel prices are going up. Are your fuel costs going up? Yeah, our costs are going up too. What are you going to do about it? Well, we're going to put in place a fuel surcharge. Oh, really? Well, we're going to do that too. What price? We're going to put in 5 cents per kilogram. Okay, we'll do the same thing. We'll follow you guys. And it all kind of comes out of the context of getting together in a social arrangement. That's where kind of things can tend to really go off course, go off track. So there's some red flags in the case study that we have here today with automated tolls. There's no question about it. Another often situation, and this relates more, I think, to price fixing, but where you have a period of protracted competition and where prices has gone down in an industry, you could see that where the competitors have just been killing each other and dropping their prices in order to get contracts and get prices, giving discounts, and it's great for the consumer. Don't feel sorry for these businesses. Okay, you do feel sorry for them a little bit, but that's the kind of thing that's good for the consumer. That's the way it's supposed to work. But it's very often you'll see a situation where these guys will get together and they'll say, we got to stop killing each other, guys. Here's the olive branch, Let's have peace. Let's have a truce. Let's have no more discounting, no more, drastic price cutting. And so if they're trying to stop a price war, that's a very common scenario where you'll see this kind of crime. Here's some more patterns, more red flags. The same vendors submit bids, and each one seems to take a turn winning as the winning bidder. Again, that can be a bid rotation. A winning bidder submits subcontracts work, or winning bidder subcontracts work to competitors that submitted unsuccessful bids or withdrew bids. This is a real common scenario where somebody wins it, let's say they win the concession, and we were talking earlier about, well, what if couldn't they subcontract the automatic tolls? They could do that, or maybe they'll be in agreement to subcontract the automated tolls. Okay, I'm going to win the bid. I'm the big winner, and I'll give you a piece of this if you submit a complimentary bid or if you withdraw your bid. And that way I can, if I'm not competing with you, I can get a higher bid price. Or it could be on a portion of the work. You build this section of the road, or you provide the concrete, the ready-mix concrete for the road. That's a very common way to have get a quid pro quo into the process. The same company always wins a particular bid. All the bidding companies end up winning the same amount of work over a series of bids. So if you take all the bids together, you tally them up, you say, wait a minute, how is it possible? What a great coincidence that all of the companies ended up with 20% of the work here, or they all seem to have the same allotment on different contracts. So those kind of auditing procedures can catch these kind of patterns. And it's important to kind of think about catching them in that way. Or if there's a fewer than normal number of bidders, where you would expect to get 7, 12 bidders. I read in the World Bank study on the Brazilian privatized roads that in the most recent phase of concessions, that I think it was in 2007 maybe, that there were 7 to 12 bidders or 7 to 13 bidders on each of the concessions. That's pretty good. Well, let's say that the next phase you only got 3 bidders, or some of the bidders from the previous phase weren't bidding for some reason. That might draw some questions. Why aren't we seeing all the same players again? Why are certain players missing from this phase? So those are the kinds of questions that should be asked. Interestingly, that World Bank study, Professor Claudio gave it to me, the study kind of criticized phase 2 of the concessionary auctions, saying that there were lowball bids, and this is something to watch out for. Be careful, because there were lowball bids, and maybe some of the companies that won the concessions weren't being realistic about the amount of traffic that they would get using the tolls. I'm sorry, in my experience, that sounds like nonsense. I mean, it just sounds really stupid. Unless how do you define lowball? Unless it's just some obscenely ridiculous number where you could not possibly build a road for 1,000 rios. If it's a number that's just low, that's a good deal for the consumer. Why would you be questioning that? And it just seemed kind of patronizing that these businesses wouldn't be able to estimate the amount of potential traffic. So I thought that was very curious, that statement. I think that's what you want. You want 7 to 13 companies bidding, and you want to get some low bids. So, interesting aside for me, at least. Okay, so we talked about leniency a little bit, and these are some of the basic requirements in order to get leniency. And I think Brazil has very similar requirements as the United States. And that is, you have to be the first company, and the immunity extends to the current and former employees. You can get amnesty in the U.S. even when there is a DOJ investigation. In Brazil, I think it's a little different. You basically would get a lower fine. It's only, I believe, 1%, or it starts at 1% of the turnover of the company, which is much lower than what the fine normally could be. The fine, I think, normally could be up to 30% of a company's turnover in the year, total turnover in the year before the investigation. Also in Brazil, it's 2 to 5 years jail time for an individual. And there have been many statements in your national cartel enforcement policy that says that the prosecutors are on a mission here to make sure that people who don't cooperate and the people who don't take advantage of this leniency program, the individuals, those executives, will go to jail for 5 years. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but in my opinion, it's just a matter of time before people here start going to jail. So here's the leniency program. And there's more information on the website. A lot of cases are international now. And so cartel cases, as I talked about earlier, the airlines case, we worked with the Brazilian SDE, and they had their own case. And so you have these international cartels with companies from different countries coming together and colluding. And you have antitrust agencies in all these different countries that are prosecuting. So it's a very interesting time to be involved in this area because it's so international.